Yo, so JP Morgan opened up like a fake little bank in the metaverse. I don't know if it was a bank in the metaverse, but they bought a plot of land. I think it was in Decentraland. And people were dragging them because they're like, yo, what are you doing here? Why are you guys coming to where we play? This is DeFi, not CeFi. This is a young man's game. This isn't for you, old people.
When did they buy it?
I don't know, a couple months ago, I want to say.
Oh, so it was recent.
Yeah, like
Okay.
there was one of these things where it's just like, actually, let me see if I can pull it up and see when JP Morgan bought space in the metaverse. But it was one of those things that drew a lot of attention because people were like, what the hell? This doesn't make any sense. And so yeah, it says JP Morgan is betting on metaverse future that could be worth trillions. HSBC joins rivals JP Morgan in the metaverse with Sandbox. Okay. JP Morgan makes a bet metaverse is a $1 trillion yearly opportunity. I'm just reading, headlines, Fortune, Forbes, all these different ones. So this was about a month ago. They opened up a lounge in Decentraland, I want to say. JP Morgan is reported in Forbes. We could put the link below. And people are really just dragging them because do they understand that crypto is the main thing that's going to take them out of a position of power? Something came to my attention recently that makes me think JP Morgan knows a lot more about crypto than we give them credit for. Now, let's talk about who runs this place. There's a guy at the top of JP Morgan, and his name is Jamie Dimon, who is
pretty cool name.
It is a baller name. It is a baller name. Who is Jamie Dimon, though? This guy is an American billionaire, businessman, chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase, and it's one of the largest four banks in America. And he's been on record numerous times just basically saying, I don't believe in Bitcoin. I don't believe in crypto. Any of my employees buy Bitcoin, I'm firing them, like just really harshly against it. So when they come in there, now they're in the metaverse, you're like, this isn't adding up, which brings me to what we're going to talk about today, which is in a roundabout way, JP Morgan owns some of the most important infrastructure in all of crypto. And I'm not talking about that little plot of land in Decentraland. I'm talking about MetaMask and I'm talking about Infura. Yes. So
decentralized MetaMask
Let's talk about
that. That functions on the Ethereum blockchain.
Yeah. So, if you remember, recently there was this thing where MetaMask and Infura were blocking transactions in certain countries and certain jurisdictions. Mm-hmm. That's when we realized that, the protocols that are in use could be decentralized, but the companies that run them are very much centralized. And so let's just talk about these companies and who actually owns them. And in order to understand this, we have to go back into time and talk about Ethereum. Okay. So Ethereum was started by a guy named Vitalik Buterin, Canadian guy. I mean, he's really Russian Canadian, born in Russia, came to Canada, went to University of Waterloo for a little while. He was writing for Bitcoin magazine, dropped out, found a bunch of other cypherpunks, little, computer geek guys who, when he wrote this paper, they believed in it. And they said, you know what, we should try this thing called Ethereum. One of those guys was Joe Lubin. Joe Lubin was one of the co-founders of Ethereum. And so long story short, they bring Ethereum to life. And then Joe goes on to build this thing called, he leaves the Ethereum Foundation or whatever, and he goes on to this thing called Consensus. Now, Consensus is an Ethereum application and infrastructure builder. Pretty much they build things that support the entire ecosystem of Ethereum. So being somebody who...
Can you give like an example of something that they've built?
Yes. I'm going to give you an example very shortly.
Okay, appreciate you.
Okay, I'll give you the two big ones. MetaMask is owned by Consensus.
Okay.
And Infura is owned by Consensus. Now, you might say, what is Infura? Infura is basically a service provider. It's like if you create an app or a decentralized app, you can have your own Ethereum node and you can deploy that app right there and you can run it completely in a decentralized fashion, like put it through your node and out to the network. Or if you have an app that has, it's getting a lot of calls, a lot of people are using your app that you built or your dApp that you built, maybe you don't necessarily got the bandwidth at your place to be able to handle it, or maybe you just need something that's a little bit more robust. Maybe you need a stronger machine to run your node because you can't afford to have it lagging behind the latest block, or whatever it may be. I don't know the technical details of it to the point where I'd be actually using these things, but I just know that Infura, they provide a service where basically they do API calls so that people who want to put information onto the blockchain or pull information off of the blockchain can do it in a very fast way, faster than they'd be able to do on their own. And this is especially applicable for people who are building dApps and people who are deploying stuff onto blockchain, right? So it's an important piece of infrastructure. You can imagine if you're a wallet, or if you're, an exchange or something like that, you might need to interact with the blockchain a lot of times really fast. So you're going to use one of these infrastructure providers. Anyhow, Joe Lubin, this guy's in Ethereum super early, becomes a major ETH whale. This guy leaves Ethereum, starts Consensus. Consensus, they build infrastructure products for Ethereum. Now, recently, Consensus just closed a $450 million funding round. And that funding round was a Series D, which means they had that before that, they had a Series C, they had a Series B, they had a Series A, and they had a seed round probably, right? So
they've been just getting bread.
Right. But people only invest money, like this is called venture capital, meaning the company is not public, but the company is one where private investors can come and they can give a little bit of money. Well, it's definitely not a little. They got 450 million in this round. Yeah. But that percentage that they get is, let's say if I give you $10 and I get 10%, that would put your company at a valuation of $100, because, $10, 10% of 100, $10, boom. So 450 million for the amount of equity they gave up. That funding round works out to that company being worth about 7 billion. So like, this guy's got bread. Okay. And he's built some great stuff. The investors that are investing in Consensus is like a laundry list of some of the most headline grabbing firms, VC firms, right? And you got, SoftBank. If anybody ever reads TechCrunch or listens to equity podcasts where they talk about investing all the time, you're going to hear about SoftBank. You're going to hear about Vision Fund 2. Microsoft was in this latest round for Consensus. And they even said like 21 Savage and Young Thug were in this one, which is
that's so random. You get Microsoft and then you get 21 Savage and Young Thug.
But you know who else is really into VC? Nasir Jones, who was which is the rapper Nas, and he was an early investor in Coinbase. So there's a lot of rappers who are getting into this crypto game. They know.
Yeah.
They know. So Consensus, like their flagship product is MetaMask, which is a browser extension. It's a mobile wallet that lets people send and receive, swap Ethereum ERC20 tokens, allows you to send and receive, purchase NFTs, and then you can also do a whole bunch of other stuff. And Infura is the tool that we talked about, and they have over like 430,000 developers that are on the roster at Consensus. So it's like, that interact with Infura, I should say. I'm reading off a CoinDesk article right now. If you think I memorized all these stats.
I mean, you're smart, but
I mean, I know some of them, but not all of them. But here's the thing that is the catch, right? Because we're talking about JP Morgan. So Consensus owns all these assets, but is reported that Consensus is based out of like Switzerland. There is like a subsidiary from Consensus that's called CSI. And there was a transaction that happened. And I'm going to read an excerpt so that I get this right. A specific point of contention, which is driving the latest legal challenge, concerns the transfer of assets, including MetaMask and Infura, from the original Switzerland-based company Consensus AG to a US-based company, Consensus Software Inc., which was spun out in early 2020 around the time the COVID pandemic hit. The value of assets transferred to CSI was determined and vetted by external experts and relevant local authorities according to documents circulated to Consensus shareholders and former staffers last year. JP Morgan also stepped in and took 10% share in CSI and contributed its enterprise Ethereum client Quorum to the new software company. So what does this mean? This means that in 2020, Consensus spun off another company under the same name, more or less, It's called CSI, Consensus. What was it here? CSI, Consensus Software Inc., based out of the US. And they moved these major assets, these major, MetaMask, they move it over to this other company. And then this guy, Jamie Dimon, JP Morgan's bank, who's super against crypto for all these years, and just one day pops up in the metaverse and we're like, yo, what are you doing here? And then they make this purchase and they buy 10% of the company that owns MetaMask. I don't know about you, but I feel like this guy has probably been pushing the price down. This Jamie Dimon fellow, he's probably been pushing the price down on all these assets to tank the market so that he can buy them himself.
Bro, it's so funny because like if you look at, the past wealthy people in this space that have been completely bashing crypto, they all end up investing in it or wanting a piece of it. So I don't know if that's a good sign for crypto or if that's a bad sign because these guys are coming into this space. Like JP Morgan owning part of MetaMask, that's kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that.
And then when we go back to talking about, when Infura was blocking IP addresses from accessing MetaMask, now that we realize that, first of all, MetaMask, it's a business, it's not a protocol. It might use protocols because protocols don't have feelings, emotions, or accountability to anybody. It's just code that runs. But a business has to abide by the law. So Infura is the infrastructure that MetaMask relies on to access the blockchain, right?
Yeah.
So if Infura is blocking certain IP addresses, then that means that somebody in there at that company made that decision.
Yeah.
Why they made that decision, that's a different story. But now that we know, okay, who are the stakeholders here? You got Legacy Financial stepping in and taking ownership of infrastructure in crypto. You got big tech, Microsoft stepping in and taking ownership positions in infrastructure in crypto. Like, what if they get co-opted? What if somebody comes to them and says, hey, we saw what happened. Russia invaded Ukraine. Definitely not saying anything that they did is right, but you saw how quickly the world turned on Russia. All of a sudden, you can't do business with them. So who's to say that JP Morgan and Microsoft are like, hey, Ethereum? Well, we can't turn off all of Ethereum, but we're going to go to Infura and say, we don't want you to do any transactions in Russia. So now people are going to have to learn how to go around using that straight line path that's user friendly, and they're gonna have to learn how to do some super computer geek stuff in order to actually access the Ethereum blockchain because the front end would be compromised.
Yeah, and what did it say? There was like 30 million MetaMask users or something like that. So imagine they go in and they block a certain country from usting it.
Well, they've already done that.
Yeah, they've done it. But like, say they ban Canada from using MetaMask. And like a big portion of the NFT world seems to be in Canada for some reason. But
well, I mean, Ethereum was born here.
Exactly. So I don't think that would happen. But like, just imagine if you just woke up one day and you didn't have access to MetaMask just because of where you were living.
Yeah. So look at this. Venezuelan users. This is from before when the thing we're talking about. Venezuelan users have also reported they are no longer able to access MetaMask. This is from IndianExpress.com. In a statement to CoinDesk, MetaMask parent company Consensus said that it observes U.S. sanctions on Iran, North Korea, Cuba, Syria, the Crimea, Donetsk, and Luhansk region of Ukraine. So I just want to point out one thing, right? There's many, many, many values to this crypto world. One is open permissionless networks. And I think that's more than anything, the fact that so many people around the world aren't able to access simple financial instruments, investments, right? A savings account, transferring money to people, or having an account to have money transferred to them. You can't have any of those things without a permissionless network. Otherwise, you're risking certain people being on the outside looking in. And this is a vulnerability to that access. So yeah, there's ways around it. And people are going to say you can change where your MetaMask points and it can use a different entry point. Yes, sure. But let's talk about how to do that so that we can make people smarter and make people more anti-fragile against these kinds of potential weak points in the infrastructure that we're going to rely on more and more.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, because I didn't really think about who owned MetaMask until we started hearing about them blocking off access to certain countries. So, because you hear like, oh, it's decentralized, or you hear decentralization being thrown around the crypto NFT space, but a lot of these platforms that are hosting these things that we use aren't decentralized. They have to answer to somebody. Like you said, the blockchain is decentralized, but the platforms that are hosting the blockchain or giving us access to the blockchain aren't decentralized. So people have been getting like rude awakenings and have been all up in arms. But if you think about the facts, they have to obey the laws at the end of the day, or else they get shut down and they go away forever.
Exactly. So that's one of the cool things. Like at my crib, I got a Bitcoin node, right? And so I go onto my computer and I can access my node and I interact with the blockchain directly right from there. And so understanding the technology underneath, it isn't for everybody until you need it. So this is just one of those times where I say, hey guys, think about how the things you're doing work. And if you don't know exactly how they work, be cautious about how much money you put into them until you do a little bit more homework, because you don't want one day your USDC to be frozen and you should have been using UST because it can't be censored by somebody at JP Morgan.
Like a low key, like Luna plug.
It was a Luna plug, but that's another episode.
that was no, man. That's crazy. And the thing is the information is right in front of you. Like when I first saw that, I saw that on like a TikTok video. So I'm thinking like, I don't know how accurate that is. But then you actually go and you look up the information. It's right in front of you. You have access to it. But
there's no conspiracy theories.
Yeah, this is happening. This is going on right now. This is a thing. So it's definitely something to keep in mind.